Some stories arrive loud. This one didn't. It came in a small, tight space between a blinking red light and a family message that assumed the answer before it asked. At revenge sins. We're used to anger. What stayed with us here was the quiet discipline of someone who had been trained, for years, to swallow discomfort until it became a habit. Her name is Caldwell. She investigates housing scams for a living, the kind that ruin neighborhoods one signature at a time. What happened to her mattered for a different reason. It was the first time she stopped paying the price of being the reliable one. What followed came in her own words. I'd just finished wiping down the stove when the camera light blinked again. It was in the open, right on the kitchen counter, pointed where the burners met the edge of the countertop. Nothing hidden. Red light on. I'd told everyone earlier in the week. I've got the kitchen camera on because of the kids and the stove. It's not negotiable. No one argued with that. People never do. Not when it sounds like you're protecting children. My place was small. 2 bedrooms. 1 bath, a narrow hallway that made it hard to carry laundry baskets without banging your hip. I loved it anyway. I'd saved for 9 years. I'd watched friends move into bigger places with help from parents who meant well. I'd watched my own mother call that kind of help spoiled. Then she'd turn around and treat my paycheck like a family utility. The night before Thanksgiving, the quiet felt earned. I set my phone on the table next to a stack of folders and a notepad. Old habits, receipts, notes, dates. I didn't write poems. I wrote timelines. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. Be at my house by noon. And bring the pie. No hello. No please. I stared at it longer than I needed to. Then another message popped up. This time from my sister. Tessa, we're moving into your place Sunday. Just till I get stable. I didn't answer right away. I stood there with the dish towel in my hands, like I'd forgotten what it was for. When I finally called, Mom picked up on the second ring. Good. You're awake. I am. I told her. My voice sounded normal, which almost annoyed me. You saw Tessa's message. I did. She needs help. The boys need stability. Tessa needs a plan. I can help her make one. Mom let out a quick laugh that wasn't funny. You always talk like you're writing an article. I talk like someone who has to live with consequences. She's your sister. She's my sister. I agreed, and even saying it out loud tightened my throat. She's not my tenant. Mom's tone sharpened. You live alone in a 2-bedroom house. You don't need all that space. It's my office. It's where I work. You can work at the kitchen table. I'm not doing this. I told her. Not again. The line went quiet for a beat. We heard the way her breathing changed, like she was choosing which version of herself to bring into the room. Iris, don't embarrass me tomorrow. I'm not the one making demands. You're going to come. You're going to be pleasant. And you're going to do the right thing. I'm going to come. I said, I'm going to bring pie, and I'm going to say no. I hung up before she could land the next sentence. My hands were shaking, not from fear exactly, from muscle memory, from years of being trained to back down. The camera light blinked again, steady and indifferent. I opened my notes app and typed one line, no keys, no access, no moving in. Then I walked to the front door and checked the deadbolt twice, not because I thought someone was coming tonight, because I needed my body to understand something my brain already knew. This is my house. If you're here for stories where the quiet person finally draws the line, stay close. By the time I pulled into my mother's driveway, the house was already loud. The door was open. Someone had propped it with a shoe that didn't belong to anyone who lived there. I could hear the twins before I saw them. That high, excited noise kids make when they've been promised something and don't know what yet. Tessa was in the living room, one hand gripping a sippy cup, the other holding her phone like it was an extension of her wrist. You're late, she said, not looking up. I'm on time, I told her. Holding out the pie. No one said a time. Mom appeared from the kitchen and took the pie out of my hands without a thank you. Set it on the counter. We're already behind. Behind what? I wasn't sure. Nothing in that house ever ran on a schedule until someone decided it did. The twins barreled into my legs. One of them wrapped his arms around my knee. The other leaned back and laughed, waiting to fall. "Hey," I said, steadying him. "Easy." Tessa smiled at that, the kind of smile that said, "See, you're good at this." Dinner was crowded. Folding chairs scraped against the floor. Someone turned the television up too loud. My dad sat in his usual spot, eyes fixed on the screen, nodding at nothing. Halfway through the meal, while I was chewing something dry and overcooked, Tessa leaned forward, elbows on the table. "So," she said, casual like she was asking for the salt, "we'll move into your place Sunday?" The words landed flat. No build-up. No ask. I swallowed. "I'm sorry Mom didn't give Tessa time to answer. Her lease is a mess." "It makes sense. You've got the space. I have an office," I said, "and my house isn't set up for kids." Tessa waved a hand. "We'll make it work." "It's temporary." Temporary had stretched into months before, then into something that felt permanent until I paid to make it stop. "I'm not doing that," I said. My voice stayed even. That part took practice. The table went quiet in a way that felt rehearsed. Mom tilted her head. "Don't start." "I'm not starting anything. I'm saying no." Tessa's fork paused in midair. "You're serious?" "I am." Dad shifted in his chair. The television volume dipped, then rose again. Mom's voice hardened. "You live alone in a 2-bedroom house. You don't need all that space." "I need my work," I said. "And my home." Tessa laughed once, sharp. "Unbelievable." Mom leaned back. "After everything we've done for you." Something in my chest tightened. I felt it. The familiar pull, the urge to explain, to justify, to soften it. I didn't. "I'll help you find resources," I said instead. "I'm not opening my door." For a second, no one moved. Then Tessa stood up so fast her chair tipped. "You're selfish." The plate left her hand before I could register the motion. It hit the wall beside me and slid down, brown streaks dripping onto the floor. The room froze. Mom didn't flinch. "If you're going to act like a stranger," she said, calm and precise, "don't call me your mother." I wiped my sleeve, stood, and picked up my coat. From where I was standing, I could see my dad reach for the remote like it might fix something. I walked out before anyone decided to stop me. The cold hit harder than I expected. I stood on the porch for a second longer than necessary, my hand still on the door handle, like the house might pull me back in if I let go too fast. Voices spilled out through the open door behind me. Not words, just noise. Someone laughing too loudly, a chair scraping. My phone was already in my hand. I hadn't planned that part. Muscle memory. Elaine picked up before the second ring finished. "It happened," she said, not surprised. I leaned against the railing. She threw a plate. A pause. I could hear typing on her end, steady, unbothered. "Did it hit you? The wall? Close enough to feel it?" "Good," she said. "That matters." I stared out at my mother's dark lawn, the plastic reindeer someone had already put out for December, one antler bent sideways. Mom's voice floated out through the screen door. "Don't let her walk off like that." Tessa's sharper, right behind it. "She always does this." Elaine's tone didn't change. "You left. That's good." "Don't go back in." I didn't raise my voice, I said. I didn't throw anything. I just said no. That's the part they won't forgive. I closed my eyes. My hands were still shaking. Small, annoying tremors I couldn't quite stop. She told me not to call her my mother. Elaine let the silence stretch this time. When she spoke, it was slower. "Okay. Listen to me. Go home. Lock your door. Don't respond to anything tonight. What about tomorrow? We'll deal with tomorrow when it shows up. Inside, someone turned the television back up. Applause from a canned audience filled the gap where a family should have been. I walked to my car without looking back. The drive home felt longer than it was. Every red light made my jaw clench. I kept seeing the plate in my head, the way it left her hand without hesitation, not anger, practice. When I got inside my house, the quiet pressed in around me. Familiar. Solid. I set my keys on the counter, took my coat off slowly. My sleeve still smelled like gravy. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. You embarrassed us. Another, before I could respond. Tessa and the boys have nowhere else to go. I didn't answer. The camera light blinked from the kitchen counter. Steady and patient. Red dot. Still on. I opened my notes app and added a second line under the first. No guilt negotiations. The phone buzzed again. This time it was Tessa. So that's it. You're really doing this. I stared at the message until the words blurred. Then I typed, I'm not opening my house. The reply came fast. After everything I've been through, I didn't type back. I set the phone face down and walked to the sink, ran the water until it got hot, scrubbed my hands like there was something I could wash off. Another buzz. Then another. Mom again. If you don't fix this, don't bother coming around. I dried my hands and picked the phone back up. I'm home. I wrote. I'm safe. I'm not changing my answer. The dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Nothing came. I checked the lock on the front door, then the back, then the windows. Even though I knew they were fine, I didn't feel brave. I felt tired, the kind of tired that settles behind your eyes and makes everything else feel far away. The camera light blinked again. I left it on. Sleep didn't happen. I lay on top of the covers, phone on the nightstand, screen dark but warm, like it might wake up again if I looked at it too hard. Around 2 a.m, I got up and made tea I didn't drink. Around 3, I opened my laptop. Old habits don't wait for permission. I logged into my bank account and pulled up the last few months, not because I thought I'd find something new, because looking at numbers calmed me down. Numbers don't yell. They don't throw plates. The first charge jumped out right away. A kids' game subscription I didn't recognize. Small amount. Easy to ignore. Then, another one from the same company. A bigger bundle this time. A grocery delivery to Tessa's address. A late fee from her daycare that I remembered covering. Except this one hadn't gone through me directly. I scrolled back farther. There it was again. That familiar pattern. Small asks that never stayed small. My phone buzzed. Tessa's name lit up the screen. You're still awake. Her message read, not a question, an assumption. I couldn't sleep. I typed back. A pause. Then, the boys kept crying after you left. I stared at the ceiling for a moment before responding. I'm sorry they were upset. You know how hard this is for me. I did. I'd known for years. I'd known when she asked me to cover diapers just this once. When just this once turned into a standing transfer. When she handed me a bill without asking first. I've helped. I wrote. I'm still willing to help, but not like before. The words sat there between us. You're good with money. She sent. I don't understand that stuff. I closed my eyes. That line again. The one that always worked. I can help you understand. I replied. I won't take it over. Another pause. Longer this time. Mom's name popped up instead. You're making things worse. I'm not. I typed. I'm stepping back. That's not how family works. I didn't answer. I went back to the screen and opened a folder labeled Receipts. It was old, messy, full of screenshots and notes I'd taken without thinking. Times, dates, amounts, patterns. At some point, this stopped being help and turned into expectation. The camera light blinked from the kitchen, still on, still recording nothing more than an empty room. My phone buzzed again. A new number this time. "Hello, this is Mike from Best Value Auto. We're just calling to verify some information listed on an application." I didn't answer right away. I let it go to voicemail. When I played it back, my stomach tightened. They had my name, not as a reference, as something closer. I called the number back just after 8. The sky was a dull, unfinished gray. Best Value Auto, Mike speaking. "This is Iris Caldwell. You left a voicemail regarding a credit application." A keyboard clattered. "Right. We're processing a filing for a 2024 SUV. Ms. Tessa Caldwell listed you as the primary co-signer. We just need to verify the digital signature on the secondary indemnity form." My breath hitched. Not a reference. A co-signer. In the world of predatory lending, that meant I was the one holding the bag when the payments inevitably stopped. "I didn't sign any indemnity form," I said, my voice dropping an octave. "I haven't spoken to my sister about a car in 3 years." A long, heavy silence followed. "That's strange. We have a digital DocuSign on file, along with a high-resolution scan of your New York driver's license and Social Security card." The mug in my hand felt suddenly leaden. I set it down before my grip failed. "I'm an investigative journalist. Mike. I cover fraud for a living. I am telling you, on a recorded line, that the signature you have is a forgery. Do not run my credit. Do not finalize that loan. Understood. Ms. Caldwell. We'll flag this for our compliance officer immediately." I hung up and headed straight for the hall closet. I pulled out my emergency documents box and dumped it onto the floor. Leases, tax returns, old insurance binders. There it was, a manila folder labeled Family/Medical. I found the photocopy of my license I'd made for Mom a year ago. She'd claimed the clinic needed it to list me as her primary emergency contact. I looked closer at the edge of the scan. There was a tiny, faint smudge on the top right corner, a coffee ring from Mom's kitchen counter. I called Elaine. My voice was shaking, but my mind was sharpening into a professional blade. "It's not just a request." "Elaine." She forged my signature on a loan application. "They have the scan I gave Mom." "Stop," Elaine said, her voice a cool splash of water. "This is no longer a family dispute. Forging a federal credit application using stolen PII, personally identifiable information, is a felony. We aren't talking about a sister who's bad with money anymore. We're talking about a perpetrator. What's the move? Don't call them. If you confront them now, they'll delete the trail. I need you to file an identity theft affidavit with the FTC immediately. Then, call your bank and put a total freeze on your SSN. Let the dealership's compliance team do their job. They'll trigger the red flags. And when Mom calls, let her talk. Every text, every voicemail is now discovery for a potential criminal case. Keep your perimeter. Iris. The law is the only fence they can't climb over." I spent the next 3 hours behind my laptop, locking doors that should have never been left open. My phone buzzed incessantly. "Tessa. Why did the car guy call me crying about fraud? You're overreacting. It was just a placeholder, Mom. Iris. Stop being difficult. It's just a car so the boys can get to school." I didn't respond. I watched the red light on my kitchen camera blink. It felt like a silent witness, a tiny electronic sentry guarding the only thing I had left my name. I went back to my mother's house 2 days later. In my family, absence isn't just a choice. It's an admission of guilt, and I wasn't ready to let them write that narrative yet. The kitchen was a battlefield of dirty dishes and chaotic noise. I walked to the counter and pointedly set the smart camera down next to the fruit bowl. It was a high-end model, sleek and impossible to miss. "I'm keeping the monitor live," I announced to the room. "Same as before. I want to make sure the twins stay away from the stove while we're in the dining room." Mom gave a stiff nod. Tessa didn't even look up from her phone. By acknowledging the camera and its purpose, I had established a public baseline. In a one-party consent state like New York, and with their tacit agreement in a common area, the legal expectation of privacy had just vanished. Dinner was a performance of strained normalcy. We passed the mashed potatoes like they weren't laced with resentment. No one mentioned the plate from 2 days ago. No one apologized for the forged signature. Toward the end of the meal, Dad, ever the tech bungler, picked up the remote. "I can't hear the boys over the TV in the other room," he muttered. "Let me pull up the feed." He tapped the cast icon on his phone. The 65-inch smart TV flickered, and the kitchen view filled the screen. But Dad didn't just hit the live button. He accidentally swiped into the daily highlights, an AI-generated recap that stitched together clips of high-motion and loud audio events from the afternoon. The first clip started playing before he could fumble for the back button. It was from 2:00 p.m., an hour before I arrived. The wide-angle lens captured Mom and Tessa leaning against the counter, right next to the camera. Tessa's voice was crystal clear, devoid of her usual helpless lilt. "If she says no to the move-in again, we'll just wait until she's on assignment in the city. Change the locks. If she tries to call the cops, Mom tells them Iris is having a mental breakdown and we're just intervening." A chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning swept through the dining room. On the screen, Mom let out a dry chuckle. She's always been soft. She'll yell for a day, then she'll see the boys' faces and cave. Just make sure you delete the login alerts on her laptop if you get in. She never checks the security logs. The table went silent. Aunt Teresa's fork clattered against her china. Uncle Joe stared at his lap. Dad froze, the remote shaking in his hand. He tried to turn it off, but in his panic, he hit the volume up button instead. The sound of their betrayal filled the house, booming and undeniable. I already used her card for the car deposit. Tessa's digital ghost bragged. She's so busy investigating everyone else. She can't even see what's happening under her own nose. I didn't move. I didn't need to. The truth wasn't a secret anymore. It was a broadcast. Tessa lunged for the remote, finally snatching it and killing the screen. The room felt vacuum-sealed. "You set us up," Tessa screamed, her face contorting. "You brought that thing into this house to spy on us. I brought a monitor to watch the kids," I said, my voice as cold as a Hudson Valley winter. "I didn't tell you to plot a felony 3 inches away from a microphone I told you was on." Mom stood up, her jaw set. "Iris, you're blowing a little venting out of proportion. We were frustrated. Venting is complaining about my cooking. Mom, planning to seize my property and hide a theft is a conspiracy." My phone buzzed. A notification from my security app. Cloud recording saved. I didn't even have to check it. Elaine had the link. I stood up, leaving my pie untouched. I used to think my silence was the price of family peace. I was wrong. My silence was just the subsidy for your entitlement. As I walked out, I didn't look back at the shouting or the tears. I just looked at the camera on the counter. Red light steady. Witness confirmed. The doorbell screamed at 7:06 It wasn't a ring. It was a siege. A long, continuous chime that vibrated through the floorboards of my quiet kitchen. I watched the doorbell camera on my phone. Mom stood on the porch, her jaw set like granite. Tessa was behind her, clutching the handle of a triple stroller, flanked by 2 oversized suitcases. It was a tableau of staged desperation. My phone buzzed. "Mom, open this door immediately." "Tessa, the boys are freezing." "Iris, stop playing games." I didn't move. I knew the law. In New York, the moment I let them cross that threshold with those suitcases, I was looking at a 30-day eviction battle. Then, 2 cruisers pulled into my driveway, strobes painting my walls in rhythmic red and blue. My heart hammered against my ribs, but I forced my hands to stay still. I pulled a folder from the counter, my deed, my ID, and the cease and desist Elaine had drafted. I stepped out onto the porch, locking the deadbolt behind me. "Ma'am," the older officer said, stepping up. "We received a call for a welfare check. A family member reported you were in a state of mental distress and unable to care for yourself." I'm Iris Caldwell, I said, handing him my New York State ID. I'm a journalist. I am perfectly fine. I am alone. And I am safe. I suspect this call was made to facilitate an illegal entry. The officer looked at my ID, then at the folder. He signaled his partner to step between me and my mother. Ms. Caldwell, are you under any duress or coercion inside this home? None. However, I pointed to the suitcases. These individuals are attempting to establish residency without my consent. I have already filed an identity theft affidavit against one of them. The officer turned to my mother. Ma'am, we've confirmed the resident is safe and lucid. There is no welfare issue here. She's my daughter, Mom shouted. She's hoarding resources while her sister is homeless. You have to make her let us in. The officer didn't flinch. His voice was flat, practiced. No, ma'am, we don't. There is no lease agreement here. There is no history of residency. This is a civil matter. We do not enforce moral obligations. We enforce property rights. If you don't have a key and a legal right to be here, you're bordering on a trespass warning. But our things, Tessa cried, gesturing to the empty porch. She's keeping our belongings. There isn't a single item of yours in my house. Tessa, I said quietly. And the police aren't a moving service. The officers exchanged a look, then stepped back toward their cruisers. We're clearing the call. Ma'am, he looked at Mom. I suggest you move the vehicle and clear the driveway. If we have to come back, it won't be for a welfare check. The silence that followed the departure of the sirens was heavier than the noise. Mom looked at me, her face contorting in a way that used to make me crumble. You've officially killed this family, she spat. No, I said, leaning back against my locked door. I just stopped being the only one trying to keep it alive. By the afternoon, the adrenaline was gone. What was left felt heavier, quieter. The kind of quiet that lets guilt try a few doors just to see if any are unlocked. I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open. Not for work this time. A daycare portal filled the screen. I recognized the name right away. I'd paid through it before. My fingers hovered over the keyboard longer than necessary. I transferred the amount directly to the account. Enough to cover the next 2 weeks. No extra. No notes. My phone buzzed while the page refreshed. Elaine Good. Keep it direct. No cash. I nodded to no one and opened another tab. Grocery store gift cards. Pharmacy only. I selected the option that blocked cash withdrawals by default. Typed in Tessa's email. Paused. Then sent it. The house stayed quiet. No messages from Mom. No follow-up from Tessa. That almost made it worse. I folded laundry to keep my hands busy. One of the twins' socks had ended up in my dryer months ago, small and striped. I held it for a second, then tucked it into a drawer instead of throwing it away. In the evening, a text finally came through. Tessa, did you send something? Yes. Another pause. It only works at the grocery store. Yes. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Thanks, she wrote. The word looked strange on my screen, like it hadn't been used much. A little later, another message. The boys ate pasta. I sat down on the couch, phone resting in my palm. I'm glad, I typed back. Nothing after that. I checked my bank alerts. Everything quiet. No new attempts. No surprises. For the first time in a while, the balance stayed where I expected it to. The camera light blinked from the counter. Still red, still steady. I didn't turn it off. Before bed, I opened my notes app and added one more line beneath the others. Help the kids. Not the chaos. I closed the app, set the phone face down, and let the house stay quiet around me. Not empty. Just mine. The park was draped in the long, honeyed shadows of late afternoon. It was neutral ground, the only place I'd agree to meet. The twins sprinted across the grass, their laughter echoing in the open air. Tessa sat on a nearby bench, her hands tucked into her coat pockets. She looked smaller than she had on my porch, stripped of the bravado that Patricia usually provided. For a long time, we watched the boys in silence. I had already sent the direct payment to their daycare and the restricted grocery cards. There was no talk of loans, house keys, or temporary moves. "Do they have to call you Aunt Iris?" Tessa asked, her voice barely a murmur. "After everything!" I watched one of the boys tumble, laugh, and scramble back up. "They can call me whatever feels safe. Tessa, names aren't the problem. Boundaries are." She didn't fight back. For the first time, the silence wasn't a weapon. It was a realization. When I returned home, the stillness of my 2-bedroom house felt like a reward. No buzzing phone, no uninvited guests, just the soft, rhythmic blink of the camera light on the counter, a reminder that I was the gatekeeper of my own peace. I locked the door, not out of fear, but out of respect for the life I had built. I finally understood that love doesn't require me to be a victim, and family isn't a debt that never gets paid. I chose peace, and for the first time, it had a perimeter.